Hi everyone, my name is Karen, this is my channel RatherBeReading, and today I'm bringing to you the TBR tag. So the TBR tag, I believe, was originally created on a blog post over at A Perfection Called Books. I will try to leave a link to that down below if I can find the original blog post. I wasn't tagged by anyone, but I just thought this would be a really fun tag to do to kind of give you guys some insight into my TBR and how I organize things and things like that. So let's jump straight in and answer all of these questions about my TBR. So question number one is, how do you keep track of your TBR pile? So my TBR books I keep separate from my red. So these shelves that I have in here are my red bookshelves, and then I have one small bookshelf in my bedroom as well as 9 or something piles on my floor of my TBR books. So I keep them separate, and then in addition to that I shelve my TBR books chronologically. So I keep the books in the order that I purchased them. In addition, so the only kind of exception to that is I've got 3 shelves on that little bookshelf, and then on the top of the shelf I've also got books on the top, and the books on the top, when a book moves from the top shelf onto the top, if that's a book in a series but there's an earlier book in the series, I will find the earlier book in the series just in case I bought them out of order, which is pretty rare, but it does occasionally happen, and I will put that book onto the top shelf, and then the book that was going to go on the top shelf I will move to the spot where the other one was. So I'll kind of, at the time that it's going onto the top, I will do a swap of their positions if I need to. If that makes any sense whatsoever. But yeah, that is how I organize my TBR pile. Question number 2, is your TBR mostly print or ebook? I do have a lot of books on my Kindle, but I would say that the majority of my TBR pile is definitely physical books. Question number 3, how do you determine which book from your TBR to read next? So we're about to find out kind of how I think I'm a little bit weird in this, but I am very like system and order based. I love picking out TBRs and what books I'm going to be reading next, and I have systems for how I do all of this. The one thing I think that is very different about me than most readers is that I'm not a mood reader. I'm just not a mood reader at all. I'm never picking up a book and going, I'm not really in the mood for this. Just whatever book I'm up to reading, I will pick up and read that book. I've never had any problem doing that. So that is a good thing. So how I figure out my TBR is that, once again, I read my books chronologically as to how I received them. So that's how I read my physical TBR, and then with my ebooks, I have been trying to lately go through my Kindle, and I'm reading the oldest books on my Kindle. So again, it's kind of chronological. I read my NetGalley books that I have off there in order of the publication date. So I try to read the most recently ready to be published books, and then if I don't have any that are coming up in the next 2 months, I'll read one of the older books that already had a published date. That's how I do my ebooks. Audiobooks and library books I just do based on the due dates. So again, it's kind of more chronological. I'm a very chronological based reader. So then within that, I generally do a physical TBR book, then an ebook, then a physical TBR book, then a library book, physical TBR book, Kindle book, physical TBR book, library book. That's kind of generally how I try to order it. I do, sometimes that has to change up if there's a book that's really pressing from the library that I need to get back. I tweak that a little bit, kind of, you know, on the go. That's generally how I try to order it. And then like within the ebook, I alternate between a Kindle book and a NetGalley book, if that makes any sense. The only exceptions with the physical TBR in terms of the chronological order is series. So if I am up to the first book in a series, so I'll read that book, and then I'll read, like, say, a Kindle book, and then the next book I'll read off my physical TBR, if I own it, will be the next book in that series. So I do give priority to series where I can. And then the only other exception, I guess, to that is if I'm reading a book, like buddy reading with someone, then I'll just pick that up whenever we're buddy reading. So that is how I pick my TBR. It sounds probably really complicated, but it's not complicated to me. That's just how I do it and how I've been doing it for a long time. Like I say, I keep a note in my phone of kind of the next 10 books I'm going to pick up, and I love going into that and reordering it when I need to, or adding some more books to the end of that. I really enjoy that type of thing, which probably makes me a bit weird. But if you have any questions about what I'm talking about, just leave them down below and I'll try to explain this in more detail if I can. But I hope this wasn't too confusing, but that is how I pick out my TBR. Question number 4 is a book that's been on your TBR the longest. So for my physical TBR, that is The Monogram Murders by Sophie Hannah. This is the oldest book that I have on my TBR now. And it's actually going to sit on there for a while, only because this is a book that is part of a new series in the Hercule Poirot series. So there are, I don't think it's just Sophie Hannah, I think there are other writers and they're writing like further books in this series by Agatha Christie. And I bought this kind of on a whim. I don't know why I bought it, because I've been reading all the Hercule Poirot from the library, but I did. And I don't want to read the like not rewritten, but like the newly released books by modern authors until I've read the whole Hercule Poirot series by Agatha Christie. So that will probably be the oldest book on my TBR for a while, because the Hercule Poirot series is quite long and I'm only on like book 13 or 14. So it will probably sit there for quite a while, but that is technically the oldest book on my TBR. On my Goodreads TBR, the book that's been shelved as to read the longest on that is Looking for Alaska by John Green, which I do actually own in physical copy and is actually on my TBR for this month. So hopefully it won't be on my Goodreads to read list for much longer. Question number 5, a book you added to your TBR recently. One of the recent books that I added to my TBR, I just did my November book haul, and one of the books near the end of that I think was The Tidal Zone by Sarah Moss. It's a literary fiction surrounding, I think, a girl who has some kind of medical condition or something and she almost dies, and I think it's about her father, who I think is a single father, raising her, and about just their lives and how they deal with this, and like this near-death experience really affects the whole family. I think that's what it's about, but that is a book that I picked up quite recently. Question number 6, a book on your TBR based strictly off its cover. Now, so for my physical TBR, I've gone with The Suspicions of Mr. Witcher by Kate Summerscale. I'll leave a picture of the edition. I never purchase a book based purely off the cover. The cover may draw me in, but I will always read the synopsis and see if it's something that actually interests me before I purchase it. So that's kind of what happened with this. I saw this edition of this book on a display and I was immediately drawn in, and then I read the synopsis and it sounded like something I would enjoy, so I purchased it. However, on my Goodreads like to read shelf, I recently shelved The Cheerleaders by Cara Thomas, and this was purely a cover to read because it's a cheerleader skirt covered in blood and there was no synopsis for it, but there didn't need to be a synopsis. All I know is that it's a YA thriller about cheerleaders. And yeah, that was definitely a cover to read, but I would never purchase it. I might read it, but I would never purchase it physically without having read the synopsis and knowing that it's something that I wanted to read. Question number 7 is a book on your TBR that you never plan on reading. None. I don't have an answer for this. I've never purchased a book that I don't plan on reading, and I don't unhaul books that I haven't read, and I never will. Every book that I own, I plan to read, and I will read eventually. It may take me a while, but I will eventually read it. I don't own a single book, and even on my Goodreads shelf, everything that I wanted to read at some point, I will hopefully, I may be like 80 years old, but I will eventually read all of those books. So yeah, I don't have any books that I never plan on reading. Question number 8, an unpublished book on your TBR that you're excited for. I actually just filmed my November marked as to read video, and that should be up before this, and I talked about this book, and that is Toil and Trouble, 16 Stories of Women in Witchcraft, I think it is, which is a YA anthology edited by Tess Sharp and Jessica Spotswood. All I know about it is that it's going to be an anthology. I don't even know which authors are going to be in it, but it's 16 short stories surrounding women and witchcraft, and that is enough for me. I'm really excited for that actually, and I don't think it comes out till like August or October or something like that next year, so it's a long way away, but that is something I'll probably definitely pick up when that comes out. Question number 9, a book on your TBR that basically everyone has read but you. For this one, I've got quite a few I probably could have picked for this, but when I was looking through my bookshelf, there was one book that jumped out at me as being a massive book that I feel like everyone has read but me, and that is Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. I haven't read anything by Rainbow Rowell, but I feel like Fangirl is the one that like everyone and their mother has read, and I haven't. I will hopefully get to it maybe next year, because I do really want to read it, but yeah, that's definitely one that I feel like everyone but me has read. Question number 10, a book on your TBR that everyone recommends to you. I don't really have an answer for this. I don't feel like there's any like one particular book that people recommend specifically to me. There's obviously books that you feel like get recommended to you a lot just by like social media and the news. That's just to do with buzz. It's not anyone targeting me saying this is a book that you would like. And there's not any book that I can think of that like 4 or 5 different people have said, hey, this book we think you would really love. So I don't really have an answer for this one. Question number 11 is a book on your TBR that you're dying to read. For this one, I've gone with the Six of Crows duology by Leigh Bardugo. I'm hoping to get to this in the early part of next year. I read the Grisha trilogy and it's one of my favorite trilogies. I loved that trilogy, and so I'm really, really excited for Six of Crows, obviously, because people freaking rave about Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. So I'm really excited to read this. I'm planning to reread the Grisha trilogy and then pick up, because I just think I'm going to love it even more doing that. So yeah, I hope to get to it in the early part of next year, and that's definitely probably some of the books that I'm most excited for on my TBR. Question number 12, and this is the last question of the tag, and it is the question that I have been most dreading answering, and it is the number of books on your TBR. So on my Goodreads to read shelf, it's a nice round number actually, which I was really excited about. I have exactly 600 books shelved as to read at the moment on Goodreads. And then my physical TBR shelf. I have never counted my physical TBR shelf until today, because I was terrified of knowing the number. So I hope you guys appreciate that for the purposes of being honest and open with this tag, I actually counted every book on my physical TBR shelf. I was hoping that it would be under 250. It's not. I have 278 books on my physical to read shelf, and that I haven't separated out. I have a few bind ups and I've just counted those as one book, so technically it could be even higher than this, but yeah, 278 books on my physical TBR shelf, which sounds kind of intimidating, but I just love buying books, so I would like that number to be lower, but I don't think it ever will be, because I just know who I am as a person, and it probably just will never be much lower than that. But yeah, that's kind of okay with me. So that was the TBR tag. I hope that you guys enjoyed this, that it gave you some insight into how I organize and plan my TBRs. I would love to, I'm not going to tag anyone, but I would love for anyone else to do this tag and let me know that they've done this tag, because I find this thing really fascinating as to how people organize their lives, because in case you couldn't tell, I just love finding different systems and things for organizing. So I would love for you guys to let me know if you do this tag. Please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe if you want to see more from my channel. But that's all I've got for this video today. Bye guys.